Is everybody? Head count. So my name's Adam Dean. I'm with Grey Castle Security, and really the purpose of this presentation is to, I wouldn't call it war stories, I'd call it more, I don't know what you'd call it, but they're stories. Just, a little bit about me. I have a Bachelor's of Science in Digital Forensics, which really doesn't mean anything yet. I'm still waiting for a degree to matter in security, more than just, getting the experience from internships and whatnot. And I'm still fairly new to the incident response game. I've been around for 2-ish years, so it's not fairly, more new. Yeah, how'd go with that? Yeah. Yep. So Grey Castle Security and I work primarily in the corporate sector, so we don't deal with law enforcement too much, or I guess criminal cases. So that takes out a lot of things. Welcome. So that takes out a lot of different cases in regards to, I guess, criminal activities, but that also opens up a lot more things that police don't want to deal with. So I've dealt with quite a bit of different scenarios, whether companies that really don't have an IT department or colleges that are, we're open and then a little bit too open. So the corporate sector, of incident response is definitely very different than the law enforcement sector. Again, like I said, it's just a lot of stupid things almost you have to deal with. Rather than, criminal activities, it's more someone had a password set on a, user account that got accessed by China. Oh yeah, by the way, I'm not very good with PowerPoint, so throughout this presentation there's going to be random animations. So be prepared for that. So throughout this presentation I'm going to give 4 different kind of scenarios where it kind of went sideways or went a little bit wonky in terms of the scope that we initially defined and how it ended up. So this is the first one. So this client was a fairly large school district, located around the area. I'll give you that much. They're very bad at patching and updating their systems and applications. And they don't really have an asset inventory or know what's on their network, which is always great to deal with. So they called us that a virtual machine hosting confidential information had these scheduled tasks that were just randomized. It appeared that way, but these tasks are not random. It's basically if you don't enter a name, they enter names for themselves. And it went to some random DLL file. Due to the information on that system, it was a lot of student information. They said it was HIPAA related. They gave us a call to make sure that nothing was accessed. Too bad that their logs weren't sufficient enough to determine what was accessed. So there's kind of little that we can do without, taking a full, image and looking at different aspects of the system. And mind you, this happened in the end of 2016. That is somewhat very important. So this server was a virtual machine, so we removed that image. We went on the hunt for this update.dll, which was the scheduled task that was set to run, I believe it was daily. And then took a quick look at logs and found that there was Symantec on the system that was uninstalled, but there were still logs there and whatnot. Again, that'll matter a little bit later. So immediately, without knowing what the hell happened, they were like, we should let the public know. So they decided to put on their website saying that a virus was found, and it was on a server which hosted confidential information. The news absolutely loved it, as you can suspect. And I later heard that there was quite a few angry parents calling the school. So the truth of the matter was nothing was found on the system. The DLL doesn't exist on the system, and the tasks appear to be older in nature. So what happened was Symantec detected this update DLL as Quackbot back in 2011, and it removed it. It kept the tasks there because they weren't inherently malicious. So it never removed those tasks. And when they were finally able to patch 5 years later, they found those tasks. So they basically told the public something that didn't happen 5 years ago.
Clearly they were following their incident response plan.
Come on. They don't have an incident response plan. So going on to incident number 2, the Romanian hackers. This is definitely top 2 of mine. You'll get to top 1 later. So just a little bit about the client. Very small healthcare clinic out in the West Coast. They're not very tech savvy. The owners didn't want to go to computers at all because they thought they were like the devil or something. Yeah, exactly. And they don't really know much about HIPAA, which is great for a healthcare clinic. So the initial contact. So they call us saying so a patient was able to Google her name and find her medical records through Google, which is a great thing to look for if you're looking to get health work done. The IT vendor found that the FTP server was basically allowing anonymous access and identified a whole 7 records, which was, accessible from the internet. Keynote there, 500 is kind of the magical number through HIPAA. If you're over 500, it's considered a OCR breach or whatever you'd call it. That's just on the HIPAA level. State level, that's still a breach. But kind of 500 is a magical number. And especially if it's over 500, there are certain rules that you have to abide by, being a healthcare entity. I forgot the name. Such as you have to report the breach within 15 days. You have to put notices on your website in case you can't find everybody that is affected. And you have to let OCR know, which is very fun. And they kind of made this statement that if you have a breach over 500 people, you are going to be audited. Regardless, doesn't matter. Right now. So they don't know what an IR plan is. They actually did do a risk assessment. It was kind of one of those ones that you fill out online. You're like, do we have this? Yes, I'm secure. You know, it was kind of one of those. And they really haven't done anything to prepare for information security incident. So we came in, we immediately requested logs from the FTP server because I didn't believe this IT vendor, to be completely honest. Just because why would only 7 be accessed and not the whole bunch of them? So the next day, an email from Johnny, who's a good friend. No. So he emailed the owner of the organization, and he said he downloaded the entire FTP server. He made some local repository, and he wants $50,000 for handling HIPAA data, which to me is like, I want $50,000 because I stole data from you. He claimed that a Romanian hacker forum knew about the FTP server, and they had the best hacker in the world. It was a tremendous hacker. So Johnny, being the awesome hacker that he is, emailed the owner from the organization that he works at, their IP address, and their domain. The FBI kind of got involved at this point and really, really enjoyed Johnny. So Johnny was found to have downloaded over 1,500 records from the FTP service. So out of 1 in a million shot, I didn't expect anybody to actually be this stupid. I pinged the domain and looked for that IP in the logs, and there was just a bunch of logs. So that kind of tells me that it was probably Johnny. Johnny likes sending strongly worded emails, and the lawyer that was working with them said it could qualify as extortion. I don't know what came of that. Johnny claimed to know the IT vendor and the patient, which is always good. And he's not very good at hide and go seek, as I said before. Pretty quickly, he's one of those names that had like a not very common last name. You could just Google him, and it just came up. You know, there's a social security number. So I decided, for my own entertainment, to graph the access, I guess, I forgot what it is. I think it's sent is considered you download an FTP document. I decided to graph those based on date. There it is. You like my animation? So over there, that's where Johnny accessed. So basically, you could just see that he accessed all the documents. That's all that is. So through log analysis, it was accessible from the internet from 2013 to 2016. All documents within were accessed by Johnny, and this was towards the end of 2016. The FTP, sort of these, I'm sure you've seen them before, where like these services will crawl FTP servers and then they'll put it on their own website and HTTP. So then that's how they become Googleable. And the documents just kind of had incremental names, and it was a scanner, so it just kept adding. And they were basically just images, the documents were. So you may be asking yourself, how did this patient Google herself? It's a good question. Just hang on. So 7 records turned into 1,500. There were 1,200 unique people. So that is over the 500 number, which means everything is, within 15 days, and there's a bunch of different things you have to do now in terms of HIPAA. The client did not want to do any of that. They're kind of like, put a notice on our website? No, we're not doing that. They're going crazy. The person that I was dealing with told me how long she hasn't slept since. Every day she's like, it's been 37 days since I've slept. And they wanted to basically take the IT vendor to court. So they finally decided to do some things that were required by HIPAA, not everything. So they got audited and probably fined. I'm not quite sure on that one. Cost about $22 per person, ended up being $40,000. Now, if you're dealing with a breach, $40,000 really isn't that bad. Especially since, it was only, 1,000 people or so. So it wasn't that bad at all. The identity, we used Kroll for that one, and they actually did pretty good by them in terms of price because they knew they were smaller and whatnot. So that was nice. So about 6 months ago, so this one's actually closer to 2 years old. And I actually just got this information like 6 months ago. So they took the IT vendor to court, and the client ended up just shutting down the practice because of this, which is ridiculous. They were like so overwhelmed by the security incident that they ended up just shutting down their practice. I'm pretty sure they're already kind of on their way out. They're older and wanted to retire, but they used this as an excuse, which is awesome. So the remaining questions for this is, how did the patient Google her name? I have quite a few conspiracy theories of my own that involve Johnny, the IT vendor, and the patient working together. But only FBI knows that. And unfortunately, they don't tell me anything. I know. I just want to know whether they neutralized the target. Exactly. So, incident number 2. I went to Puerto Rico. I'm trying to practice my Spanish. All right. Oh, hey. We're getting to that, sir. All right. So about the client, it doesn't really matter. This could have happened to anybody, but it was a fairly large organization, if that helps. The employee of this organization quit and decided to delete a bunch of data before quitting. And it was told to me that this was critical information that they needed back. So the client needs data recovery. And I realize that this isn't necessarily incident response, but we kind of put it under that umbrella, just so it's different internal things that we do. And their IT practice is what I'd call solid, meaning that they kind of knew the procedures and knew what to do and when to, I guess, call us. So that's definitely extremely helpful. So the beginning of it, we'll typically ask a client for date ranges or something to narrow down the amount of files or hits that we'll get. But they needed just a lot of data back. And it ended up being the entire user folder, I guess. But they really were focusing on 2015 to termination date, and they didn't really have any keywords. And this was just on one Windows laptop. So we were able to start recovering, I guess, data. Well, we ended up recovering 90% of it on an SSD, which is pretty rare, I guess, only because once you overwrite on an SD, you're not getting anything back. It's kind of etchy-sketch. And the employee, based on what I could see on the computer, the employee didn't use it regularly or as much as other people may use a computer. So that was more helpful to us. So most of the critical data that they're initially looking for was recovered, as well as about 50,000 selfies. Now, here's the thing about selfies. Yeah. Well, no, 50,000 pictures, and a lot of them were selfies. Now, yeah, but the selfies weren't the kind of selfies that you post on Facebook. There were probably a couple thousand actual selfies out of that 50,000, but there's a lot of pictures that I had to go digging through, which was fantastic. I kind of heard down the pipeline, I don't know if it's true, but the client was actually brought to court because of discrimination or something like that. Again, I don't really hear too much of this information, only because I don't deal with the legal side too much. I mostly just deal with recovering the data. So the critical data kind of was no longer a concern, but rather recovering these selfies. There's a lot of darkness in this case. The employee leaves and an agreement is made, I guess, to kind of leave quietly, I guess. I'm not quite sure on the specifics of that, again, because I don't deal with the legal side too much. And I rarely ever know the end of these, just because I don't deal with it. The only time where I may know the end is if they need me right to the end of the case, I guess. So that one was life-changing and scarring all at the same time. So the final incident, Mr. Airplane. So about this client, another fairly large school district, they had an IT guy. It was just, go to the IT guy, he'll fix it. This guy was literally in a broom closet. There was a broom next to him where he worked. So as you could probably guess, they didn't invest too much into their IT infrastructure or their broom closets. And then they called at 9 p.m. on Friday, so that's always awesome to deal with. So how this initially came about is teachers were reporting that they're hearing the beeps and boops on their computer. Their computer is just making random beeping noises. And Symantec was whining about some sort of Quackbot virus on about 50 systems. Teachers all had local admin because they don't want to annoy the IT guy. And the old IT guy was terminated for careless actions, whatever that means. So just a tiny little bit about Quackbot. It's a worm that tries to exploit vulnerabilities. It'll try to brute force passwords to spread across the network. It'll try to deploy itself from anywhere it can get access to. That's just a little bit important for later. And it will deploy itself from multiple points. So basically what I did, because I didn't want to deal with this on a Friday at 9 p.m., I just reimaged a new computer using only local admin accounts. And didn't find an infection, which is good. It's a good start. Connected to a domain, didn't find an infection. Connected it to all the file servers and everything that needed no infection. Connected it to the antivirus server, and magically a detection for Quackbot appeared. So later on I actually verified those, I guess, results, because that's a little bit of a sketchy way of doing it. So they have a managed Symantec server which pushes out the product updates and definitions. Quackbot decided that would be a perfect place to make a distribution point to actually spread to everybody's computer. So basically, the antivirus server was a virus server. So what we did is basically this IT guy, mind you, one guy in a broom closet, didn't want to reimage everything on the network, and the school didn't want to actually hire anybody to do it. So I wrote just a super quick script. We found all the tasks, status schedules, and all the services, and just shut it all down across the network. and then just let Symantec do the rest of the cleanup, and just hope nothing comes back, because QuackBot is extremely dirty in the sense of how it comes back onto the network, and also removed everybody's local admin credentials, and kind of just let it flow free. So true story. I thought that was going to last longer. So please ask so many questions. Yes, thank you. Hmm? Yeah, it was causing the problems for them because they didn't want to do anything, but they needed to do something, therefore I'm the problem. So basically, and I was working with a lawyer on this to actually tell them what they need to do, or else they could get fined ridiculous amounts of money. So we just told them straight out, this is what you need to do, you need to get fined. And they basically picked off a list of what they want to do and what they don't want to do. And they ended up getting small fines. It wasn't actually that bad. So when this first came up, we knew that there was a breach. Anytime Greycastle knows, I'm not a lawyer, so anytime Greycastle knows that there's a breach occurring, we initiate kind of our legal partners. And it actually changes. Yeah, I call them, yeah. And basically how it works is we're the lawyer's client, and our client is also the lawyer's client. So there's some sort of privilege there. So it's kind of like a triangle, I guess. So we'll just, we do it that way. But until there is a breach, we most likely will not, or unless there's not a high chance of there being a data breach, we sometimes won't engage a lawyer, only because, it costs money. And especially for smaller companies, it's money that they can't really afford. Yeah, so what we will do is we'll tell them what they should do, and if they don't want to do it, then they're going to deal with a data breach through us, and when they get fined, we can't do anything about it. So they have that expectation, if they don't want to go with the lawyer, that we can help you get services to notify and to report this to state agencies, but we're not going to do it. Because we don't want to hold that liability, especially since we aren't attorneys. Yes.
I just know that in our environment, we were found that in our incident plan, like each and every forensics is totally treated more as two fault because it is. Because once it is, it won't be discovered.
Yeah. So especially for public companies, it's a big concern. But a lot of times, at least for us, a lot of times forensics is just malware infections, ransomware, things like that. Where if you get a lawyer involved, it's just going to add another step, cost the client more money, so it's not really needed until there is discoverable, I guess, evidence that something else occurred where there could be legal action down the road, then we get a lawyer involved. No, we'll stick around for a while. So if they need to report a breach, we will typically draft a letter for them, for instance, send it off to the attorney for the attorney to review, make sure that everything's kind of all clear, and then we'll kind of set them up with, we don't do identity theft protection or anything like that, so if they want to go down that route, I believe with HIPAA you have to, so if they want to go down that road, we'll set them up with a service that provides it, like Kroll or AllClear or other identity theft protection agencies, and just make sure that, the incident which caused this data breach to occur is stopped and is contained, eradicated, and recovered from. No. Right. Yeah. Yeah, I mean, it's not our liability. If they don't it's not, it's not our data breach, it's theirs. So we're helping them kind of perform the best practices of dealing with it, I guess. And if they don't want to follow those, okay, good luck. Yeah. Yeah. Yes.
So in the earlier case you mentioned the FBI involved, in that case so you had to do chain evidence stuff and all that kind of stuff. Are you still working for the client?
Mm-hmm.
Basically,
Yeah, so typically if FBI gets involved or any local law enforcement, one of two things will happen. If it's clearly illegal, for instance, if I find like child pornography on a computer, I just report it to law enforcement and that's it. I'm out. Since we're a private company, we don't deal with it. But in the case where like it's logs which shows that this person most likely accessed this server and downloaded documents through unauthorized means, I guess, then ask for $50,000. In that particular case, the FBI just wanted our final, I guess, findings report and just like a meeting to talk to them about, what happened, how it happened, who did it, that kind of thing. And then they made Johnny disappear. Yeah, so we charge for incident response, we charge hourly. And the reason for that is because in these cases, we get in thinking it's one thing and it's a completely, like we'll assume it's one thing and then we'll find out it's completely different. So if we did it, just blocks of price, I guess, we need a lot of different paperwork in place and change orders and things like that. As a consulting company, it's very difficult to do, so we just do kind of hourly, I guess. Most of the time, we're kind of on the ball in terms of how many hours a client should get and how much we spend. I don't know, so I'm going to say no. Yes. There's salespeople in the back, and they're going to hate my answer for this. Unless it ends up being cheaper for the organization to pay for retainer. So if they just have a strict budget, I want this much for IR this year, massive company, they don't really care where their money goes, they just want it, laid out, then a retainer might be more useful. But a typical, let's say just a school district, it's not needed. Our retainer services tend to be cheaper than, hourly, but what if you never get an incident, So it could just be a complete waste of money. In my opinion, the proactive things you should do in incident response is more developing a plan, testing it, making sure that your users know when to report something odd going on, doing awareness, things like that, rather than just being prepared for the worst. Yeah. Yep. Yeah, so we do incident response tabletops, which is typically it's somewhat close to, a real case, but I'll kind of bring it to level 11 just to, really kind of test exactly how their plan works. And then they'll respond to it and see what's going on, go through the process, and then we'll kind of provide them with the findings document, things that they should update in their plan. And general recommendations. For instance, I'm doing one next week where one of the, the key reasons why this thing failed is because they didn't have encryption on their laptops, which stores super confidential information. So probably by the end of it, we're going to give a recommendation to encrypt your laptops. Yes. It's a really good question. Well, obviously anything that's clearly illegal, we'll bring law enforcement, obviously. If it's something massive, the client most likely will want us to contact FBI or state agencies or law enforcement for that. I'm thinking like, massive ransomware outbreaks. There is no clear line, though. You know, typically any breaches, they'll notify local authorities. The local authorities won't care, but they'll just notify them to say that we notified them. But generally, law enforcement only cares enough to like respond to something if there's something clearly illegal going on, and you know who the clearly illegal, person is. Yes. Yeah.
Was it just one? First of all, was it just one person's selfies, or was it like a community?
Define one person.
Okay, the main person that was involved.
The owner of the computer was in all the pictures.
Okay.
I cannot say for certain that he was the only person in those pictures.
No, but it was more like misuse of public property, nothing else,
Yes.
right?
Correct. Yeah. Yeah, nothing illegal. Just very immoral. I'll put it that way. There's a lot of chains and oof. You're bringing back bad memories.
So prison's almost a reward.
Yeah. I guess. It just isn't right. I mean, had to bring gingerbread cookies into the mix. Oh, God. You'd have to go Googling really hard to find pictures like that. Not illegal. Just very odd. Should be illegal. Not illegal. Yes. So that's a funny story. So when I first started looking at schools, I played video games like most teenagers, I guess. I was like, I want to do something with computers, knowing nothing about computers. So I looked at a school, saw a program, like, sounds interesting, and just went for it. That's it, yeah. No idea what it entailed. I know now. Oh, holy crap. That was really quick. That's what I'm talking about. I think this is actually just a tribute to your definition. Yeah.